Hello, and great to see you. So many people here, and I know why, because I spent 4 years, almost 100% to this subject, fusion. So this is nuclear. It's the leading exhibition of its kind. And I'm so glad to see all of you here. And now we're going to dig into fusion. For some of you, it probably will be an introduction, but I think the majority are familiar with it. We have some amazing guests, but we have also an amazing moderator who is here. And I would like to introduce him, Matteo Barbarini, nuclear fusion specialist. Please welcome up on stage. International Atomic Energy Agency. Welcome, and please have a stand here. So great to see you. I was bragging about 4 years in fusion, which is nothing. You started early on, right? Tell us your background.
Thank you, Linda. Yes, so yeah, fusion is what I studied back in school. I did my bachelor in electrical engineering and then my master and PhD in fusion. My specialty is laser fusion. We're going to hear also a little bit about laser fusion today, but I've been at the agency now for more than 8 years, and of course our program covers both inertial fusion, magnetic fusion, so we deal with everything which is fusion. So by today I always joke that I have a postdoc on magnetic fusion by now.
Wow. Well, good. The best of luck with the panel.
Thank you.
Give him a warm hand, and please welcome later the keynote and the panel. Thank you, Matteo.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
So good morning, everyone. Today we have the first ever fusion session at WNE, which is it's a big deal. It's a reflection of the field growing relevance. As you probably know, fusion has been pursued for decades in laboratories, research institutions. But today, fusion is also becoming an important component of national energy strategies. There is growing interest from investors, from technology companies, and fusion is beginning to find its own place in industrial planning. Of course, there's still a great deal of work ahead of us, and technical progress on its own will not bring fusion power to the grid. For that, we're going to need a broader industrial base, involving companies across the supply chain, our skilled workforce, and more investment. Of course, we also need supply chains which are capable of producing advanced components and specialized systems at scale. Regulatory frameworks will also play an important role, as this will give confidence to investors. Partnerships between the public and the private sector is becoming more and more relevant. And technologies developed for fusion, you will hear today, are also making already revenues in today's world before fusion power plants are being deployed. So this is why today's panel is called From Breakthroughs to Industry. Today we're going to look at how fusion can move from research into a functioning global energy industry. So let me introduce our distinguished panelists. Together they represent the breadth of fusion from global R&D institutions, engineering, enabling technologies, and the lessons from the nuclear industry, which is so relevant to this crowd. So from ITER, the world flagship international fusion project, we have ITER Director General Pietro Barabaschi. Please welcome him. Thank you, Pietro. From Ansaldo Nucleare, the CEO, Daniela Gentile, who leads one of Europe's key engineering and component delivering partners with deep ITER and EU program experience. Thank you, Daniela. From RWE Nuclear, Con Henrik Lefalm, Task Force Manager. He will bring the utility perspective, so infrastructure, grid integration, and market deployment. Thank you. So from Thales Group, Antoine Loydreau, representing enabling technologies like plasma heating solutions, laser diagnostics. He will also highlight for us the crossover between fusion innovation and early commercial markets. From Westinghouse Electric Company, Marie Blanc, President of Outage and Maintenance Services. Marie brings decades of lessons from fission, scaling safety and quality assurance. And last but not least, representing China National Nuclear Corporation, we welcome Long Zhang. He will bring the perspective of China fusion and industrial integration. Thank you. So we'll play now a nice video before we start. And after that, I will introduce our keynote speaker. If the video can go. Great, thank you. So, before we begin, let me introduce someone who doesn't really need any introduction. We welcome our keynote speaker, Massimo Garriba, Deputy Director General, Directorate General for Energy, European Commission. So, Massimo has been closely involved in shaping Europe's clean energy strategy and will speak on how policy and industrial frameworks can support fusion's next steps.
Good morning. It's good to be here today to talk about fusion. In the EU, we want to get to net zero in 2050. And we need to harness all possible sources to do so. If you listen to Fatih Birol yesterday, he said that 35% of the CO2 that we need to eliminate in order to get to net zero will have to come from technologies which we don't have yet. And fusion is one of those. It's one of the most promising of those. In the EU, we have financed fusion for the past 6 decades, consistently. And this has resulted in investment like JET, like Aztec's Upgrade, like the West Tokamak. And this has meant that we have accumulated a large experience on it. This is accompanied by our member states having a continuous involvement in that, and they are stepping up in it. We can look at things like materials and the dones in Spain. We can see things like DTT in Italy to look at the exhaust in fusion machines. And we have countries like Germany that want to step up and move faster, that are committing 2 billion euros with a 2029 horizon to accelerate the quest for fusion. But, there is a but, there are barriers, there are important barriers that we need to take into account, and I hope that in this panel you will discuss that. I mentioned two, because these are very much in my heart. One is materials, and the other one is the breeding of tritium. If you don't beat these two things, you will not have commercial fusion. And you need to keep these in your mind and in your heart. So this is why we have ITER, because ITER is going to put things in a different context and is going to have the possibility to test an environment in the nearest conditions that we can imagine today for a fusion reactor. And this is why the whole international community, and Europe in first place, are keeping up and financing this project to the, I would say, to the best of our possibilities. Then let me turn inwards, and let me tell you that in this environment, we had a step change in the past few years. We had the private sector, which has progressively come into a domain which was, how can I say, the exclusive property of the public research. This is, of course, good, because it will wake up people and push things to move faster, and bad, because some people will overpromise and will underdeliver. So, in this environment, in Europe, we need to understand how we do things. And this is why in the Commission we've been discussing with the stakeholders for the past 2-3 years on how to shape the future of fusion in Europe. And we intend to look at a number of issues which I think are fundamental for pushing fusion forward. I'm talking about Europe, but you can translate it even well beyond Europe. The first one is you need a coherent governance in order to make sure that things happen. And they happen in the right place and at the right time. And you don't have 20 people that do the same thing and nobody that does the most difficult ones. You need to ensure that the efforts are spread in a way which is relevant to the challenges. The second one is that you need to decide, apart from ITER, what are the relevant pieces of infrastructure which are needed to fill the gaps. We've talked about, I've mentioned two, there are others. There is nothing as far as tritium breeding is concerned, for example. I would like to hear your views on that again. The third is how to make sure that the strength of the private sector, the speed of the private sector, and the knowledge which has been accumulated in the public sector are put together and are used in a consistent way. And the fourth, we need to look as to whether what we have now in terms of regulatory framework is actually adequate. And I'm not talking only, when you mention regulatory framework, people think immediately about safety. And I'm not talking only about safety. I'm talking about the whole issues which are linked. And I'm talking about safety, I'm talking about investment framework, I'm talking about the liability framework, and so on and so forth. So we need to understand whether we have an environment which is tailored to the risk of the technology that we want to make commercial. Let me also say that, and it was said yesterday in the opening very much, that we need also a workforce that is able to address all this. And we need, in particular, and you can see it also from the gender imbalance of this whole panel, we need more women into this effort. And this is something else that we need to see. I will end this very short introduction by saying that the international element at this stage of development in fusion is particularly important. So I welcome very much the involvement of the IAEA, ECG, that has become a champion on fusion, but also you, Matteo, that are here today to coordinate the panel. Our objective is to move fusion out of the research and to ensure that we can start producing energy with it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, DDG Gariba, Massimo, for setting the stage. So I think we can hear it's very loud outside, but our speakers will do their best to make sure you all can hear us here on stage. So let's start now with our panel. And first of all, I want to go to you, Pietro, and I want to hear from you. And you know, I always like to start in the middle of the story. And this month, the National Geographic dedicated a full issue to the ITER project. It's quite impressive. I really invite all of you to check it out if you haven't seen it. It's a beautiful issue. There are wonderful pieces covering the whole project and the importance of the project. And you've been quoted in one of the articles saying that fusion is both a sprint and a marathon race. I think since you came, it's only been sprint. But tell us, why do you think that? Please tell us, what do you mean by that?
Well, I mean that because, let's say, now if I speak about the ITER project, the project is a project of extreme complexity. It is a project of complexity not only in technology and in science and in the supply chain, but it is also complex from the organizational standpoint. And it has a very, very challenging schedule that we have to implement. So we have to move on a fast, pace, which, by the way, we are doing now. But we also have to do it for a long time. So that's why I say we are sort of every day, it's a sprint. That's what I told the journalist of the National Geographic. But we have to be ready to do so for the long term. It's not going to be done and dust, let's say, in a short time.
So the project, since you came, has gone through like a very intense phase, and now everyone can see it's back on track. You have 2 of the sectors in the pit. I think you're planning to have a 3rd one soon. If you haven't been there, please go see it. It's really breathtaking. But so what is your plan now? What do you have ahead of you, and how has the project been generating value throughout these years, and how is the project role in this growing field, in this evolving field?
Okay, thank you, Matteo. So one of the priority of the project, of course, any project, is execution. And we are, as you say, on track. We have now an SPI, which is in excess of 1. We are ahead of schedule, well, relatively speaking, let's say. And we have good cost performance, so in the green. So since 2 years, since we are reorganized ITER towards more a project standard organization, we are doing well. But still, as I said, it's a long way. So the key point is, how can ITER be valuable to society today? This is a big question. And we have to give back to society today, not just when we will become, say, a research infrastructure. So there are areas where we can act in providing, say, connection between the supply chain and the private integrators. That's something we are doing. And we are also trying our best to provide the know-how that was developed during the ITER design and during the ITER, so far, the execution, to private sector. You know, there is a lot of material which is published in the literature. But generally speaking, the stories which are published are the good stories, not the bad stories, not things that didn't work. And this know-how is in fact very valuable. So we are developing design guidelines, as it was done early in the fission industries. We are developing, say, manuals, and we are providing a platform for the private sector to benefit, if they want so, say, in terms of knowledge transfer. So ITER being publicly funded from, say, citizens from all around the world, we are trying to give back as soon as possible this know-how to those private companies that we wish to engage, maybe with a more aggressive schedule than we have, good, but try to help them succeed.
And that's even before coming online, right? So if you can tell us briefly what will happen once ITER comes online, because Massimo was talking about these challenges that we have to overcome. What will we know after ITER, and what will remain after that?
So in ITER, we will take about 1 gram of deuterium and tritium in 1,000 cubic meter and bring them to 150 million degrees. That's basically the summary of what will happen in ITER. But very important is that ITER is designed to sustain this thermonuclear reaction for a period of time where the thermal equilibrium will be reached in the structures. This has never been done before. Now, the big question that ITER will not do, and this I should be very transparent, and that maybe Massimo was alluding to, is that to develop now into a workable technology for society, it's not just a matter of getting more power or more energy than we put in. It's making sure that we can develop a technology where private sector can get more money than the money we put in. And that's the next step. And this is not necessarily going to be addressed by ITER. ITER can provide a lot of know-how about maybe what things that we could do better, that's for sure. But there are key technologies. Massimo mentioned about tritium breeding, mentioned about the materials, because it's so neutron-rich fusion that it's providing difficulties in handling, say, the engineering limits of materials. And the question of power flux, I have a long list of things where there will be the need of a concerted R&D activity all around the world in order to make fusion a reality. So that is all to say that ITER integrates many of these technologies, but not to their full extent, because that would be too much, I think, to try to do everything. So it's not really a prototype reactor per se. It is more of a research infrastructure that has been built to integrate as many technologies as possible. And here I'm trying to really to be as transparent to align expectations, because if I may, Matteo, there is a lot of hype around the world about nuclear fusion. From my perspective, there is too much hype. Okay, how can this be? Too much hype. Well, I think it's important to have a correct representation and to be grounded in these new technologies to make sure that we can address the technology problems that we have ahead of us, be realistic about the time frames, so not to create expectations in the public and also policymakers that will at some point get back to us, and we will then have some explaining to do.
Great. So yes, great point. Transparency will be crucial. And you also spoke about technologies, and I think it's a perfect segue to Daniele and Ansaldo, someone who has been developing, testing, improving a lot of these technologies. And the question for you, Daniela, is how do we move to this one-off components development to scalable manufacturing and to a full fleet of fusion power plants? So how do we go there? How do we get there?
So good morning, everyone, and thanks, Matteo, for your question. Well, in my opinion, the first and most critical step towards a scalable fusion is to truly leverage the lesson learned from ITER and from other, let's say, fusion experiments. Well, ITER has, Pietro has just mentioned, has no precedent in terms of technical complexity, organizational complexity, so to deliver such an unprecedented project. So, and this is precisely why it offers such a rich set of lessons to be put, let's say, to be learned in order to industrialize fusion. From an industrial perspective, I think that moving from one-off tailored component, highly bespoke, a shift in mentality is needed. We need to be more pragmatic. We need to be pragmatic, goal-oriented with the industrial approach in order to cope scientific excellence with manufacturability and reliability and schedule disciplines. Mr. Gariba has just mentioned a couple of challenges for the future, which are technology related. I will add some challenges I see. The first one, already mentioned and, as well, is relates to the regulatory asset. So fusion lacks of a fully dedicated fusion, fitted for fusion regulatory. And this is critical because without a fitted for fusion framework of rules, the ecosystem tends to resort to excessive of conservatism. And excessive conservatism brings to stalling of innovation, slow down licensing, and finally can paralyze completely the industrialization. So fit for fusion is a first challenge to be addressed. The second one is related to industrial processes. Because after ITER and after those first research and development, let's say, big laboratory of experience, the design will have to evolve for many years on a relatively shallow curve. So it means that industry will have to deal its procurement and manufacturing with a not completely defined design of components that are evolving. And this could, let's say, replicate the numerous problems that interfaces and reworks are required. And let's say, rather than benefit of the enormous potential of fusion, right, be hindered by them. The third challenge is related to supply chain, because supply chain, we see a kind of paradox, where fusion is bringing on, let's say, in the framework, some huge potential, creating business opportunities, stimulate investment, and stimulate the growth of a dedicated supply chain. On the other side, the nuclear supply chain is still struggling on the first of a kind, let's say, dynamics. With high qualification cost, also, and without a long-term visibility to invest. So there, I think that we need to bridge this gap. And to bridge this gap, it required a partnership approach, so a risk-reward approach, in order to not to lose all the experience we have made. From Ansaldo perspective, so our lesson learned, so I again mentioned 3 points. The first point is related to co-engineering. So the soonest the engineering is, let's say, is co-developed and the problems are tackled together, so the better is, and the quickest are the results. So we have seen that with ITER and fusion for energy, the best results have been obtained once and after through deep iterative co-development, tackling the issues. The second is relevant to the qualification. So we need to standardize qualification, because otherwise there is no way to tackle the industrialization. And the third is leveraging ITER experience, simplify as much as possible the execution. So simplify. Finally, we are talking about ITER, and so what was within the scope of ITER, but is something outside the scope of ITER that, in my opinion, should leverage this lesson learned. It's in energy storage, it's in power conversion, it's in intermittent, let's say, with the grid, the intermittencies of the grid. So we have a lesson learned on ITER, so use it. Otherwise, those points can become the bottleneck of the future. So in the end, we need a regulatory shift, a supply chain shift, cultural change. But I think that, again, there is a lot of experience in the decades of working in ITER, and by using those, we can, let's say, move from the fantastic and scientific experiment to a sustainable industry for fusion.
Thank you, Daniela. It's amazing how all these lessons learned and integration needs to happen really in real time for fusion. Because now we're in this phase where there's not only the R&D organization, there's, as we said in this panel, we're discussing from research to industry. And so all of that needs to happen in real time. And I think that's also what projects like ITER are going through. You went through this components repair recently. You had to take out one of the sectors, right? And then I was impressed to see how quickly then you managed to improve and make more efficient your project execution. Because I think if you tell us, if you could just recall for us, how long did it take you initially to bring the sector into the pit? But then when you had to take it out and bring it back in, I think you did it in 1/3 of the time, right? So that's...
Yes, so the first sector modules, so ITER is built in 9 sector modules. The first one that was actually had to be repaired, by the way, so we had to pull it out. But it took almost 2 years to assemble, which it's not correct. It shouldn't be. And now we are at a pace which is less than 6 months. So we are able now to mount 2 sectors every 6 months. So that required, of course, you know, looking at lessons, and required a bit of acceleration. But all of that was possible. You are impressed? I'm not that impressed, in fact. So I think this was possible, and we will try, by the way, to move even faster. We are greedy for speed.
Okay, so that brings us naturally to Westinghouse, another company with deep experience in fusion and fission. And my question for you, Marie, is what are the lessons we can learn from the fission industry that you think are going to be useful for future fusion commercialization? And then also recently we read the news of Westinghouse signing a 180 million contract with ITER for the assembly of the vacuum vessel. So what does that mean for Westinghouse?
Yeah, so coming from Westinghouse, it is a, 140-year-old American company, very focused on innovation. And what this contract basically means is a continuation of that innovation journey, out of which 60 years or so in advancing fission energy. So if you take back on what we heard from Pietro here, we have the sectors, just to give a picture of the complexity of putting these sectors together into an assembly. They're very tall, so whatever, 11 meters or so to bring together. All 9 together at the same time, using different techniques to weld and put it together. And again, a little perspectives to it. We're going to lay more than 1 kilometer of weld to be able to put this vessel together. And that is done by using technologies such as advanced machining, non-destructive examination, welding, and as well as metrology. And this is, while this is a first of a kind, it's not the first time we do a first of a kind using those technologies. So I was here 4 years ago, and I spoke at one of the workshops here together with a colleague about doing welding at the Flammable 3 main steam lines, basically bridging together the same pieces of technology in a different first of a kind. So it is a very, very challenging task for the teams, but it's also one of those that bridges fusion and fission together in the sense that we started off in a fission area with experience, skill sets developed over these many years, including recent challenges. And through the ITER project, we'll bring that into fusion energy with that industrial mind of also working for speed in the machining, well, that it's repeatable. And so this is the first step of actually bringing it into the industrial way of thinking as we do this.
What other projects you engage with in the fusion world? How much of Westinghouse portfolio is fusion taking right now?
The portfolio itself is very small. We do collaborate in R&D space. I mean, if you also look on from that perspective, whether it's material science or AI solutions, there is a lot in common, and where Westinghouse is engaged in many R&D aspects of that. And that's where our main engagement is, plus in the support of the ITER and as a partner to ITER, both in terms of delivering sectors as well as then putting them together.
Great. So you can see how, for these companies, I think fusion is an opportunity, right? And I think this is an opportunity for all of you also in this room. We'll come back maybe to this at the close to the closing of near to the closing of the session. Now, thank you, Marina. I want to move to Longzhang from China National Nuclear Corporation, CNNC. I think here, as we hear from you, I want to highlight how China is really an incredible example of a country that has realized the potential of ITER in real time. Since joining the ITER project, I think in the early 2000s, how China and through CNNC has managed to integrate all the processes, the manufacturing the components, the study on the design into a national fusion strategy, which is now being industrialized and in partnership with the private sector. So how is that working in China, and what's the role of CNNC there?
Okay, good morning. So today we are talking about breakthroughs. We know there are a lot of significant progress, but we also have to admit there are still great challenges for the fusion in the physics, engineering, materials, and the big companies manufacture. So we think it's very difficult for only for one institution or one company can solve all these kind of challenges. So the top level coordination and organization is very important. We think it's very essential. So luckily in China, especially in CNNC, in the fission field, in the past years, we have successful experience about how to organize this. For example, the research institutions, the industry companies for supply. So based on this successful experience, also in fusion, we think it's important to make the top strategy in the national level and organize all the relative force work together to solve all the challenges. And taking ITER as example, Matteo asked, for the ITER in China, coordinated by the CNDA. So research institutes like SWIP are working for the physics and also for the technology development. And large industry companies like Dongfang Group, they are working for the manufacture of big components, and some are already being delivered to the ITER site. And also CNPE, which is a specialized company for the EPC of nuclear power plants. They have a very good experience. Now they are working for the assembly of the ITER together with Westinghouse and other international companies. So this it shows a very good example how we can use the successful experience from the fission industry. We can improve the development of the fusion. And just this year, based on this context, CNNC decided to establish a new company. The name is China Fusion Energy Corporation. So the aim of this new company is to improve or promote the commercialization of the fusion development in China. Because CNNC is in the past 70 years, we are like the national team for the nuclear industry in China. So fusion is always our major aim for the development. So the purpose of this new company is also to do the further coordination with all the forces in China and also enforce the international cooperation to accelerate the fusion development. Okay, thank you.
So, Pietro, I'm coming back to you again. This example of ITER being leveraged and being central in one of your ITER member states. What do you think of this? Is this something that you like to see as ITER playing this role and then one of the ITER member states moving so fast in this direction?
Yes, so we can do much. We are trying to do as much as possible, of course, and the focus is again on the execution. But we are also trying to make sure that some key companies, some key suppliers, some of which are here around this table, can get the experience of ITER to an extent where they can understand the technology and they can redeploy the technology whenever needed. So that is a very important element, which I think everybody here around the table recognized. Just like CNP or Ansaldo Nucleare or Westinghouse and many other companies from around the world and are, say, engaged in activities which nobody else ever did before. Of course, it's not now something that we shouldn't be scared of. But nevertheless, it's first of a kind, and the experience that can be gained, particularly, if I can say, the experience of what we should not do. Sorry if I put the finger there, even if it sounds bad, you know, oh my God, and then we made a mistake. Well, mistakes happen when you do some things first of a kind, and these mistakes we just need to be recognized, understood, and documented. And that is part of the value of our project today. And I'm trying really to do my best, together with my team, to make sure that this knowledge is not hidden, but the contrary, is made available, it's published, it's well known, so that people will not, say, make, I call it again, mistake. They are not always mistakes, it's just taking maybe the wrong road. Do it efficiently. And so far it's working, because we see, for example, activities that we are taking in a certain way. I take the sector module assembly as one, and that went in the wrong way. We analyzed that, and we managed to do it now again at 3 to 4 times the speed, you see? So by recognizing some say, wrong activities, we can now implement them, and it's actually CNP now with Framatome that it's implementing the sector module assembly so efficiently. And similarly, the discussion with Westinghouse on the vacuum vessel welding, we knew that we were going after some experience not exactly in the right way. We are not going to be flexible enough in dealing with some non-conformities. Now we are preparing for the vacuum vessel welding, and also how the French regulator will monitor that in a way which, from my standpoint, will lead to a successful implementation. Thanks to you also and Westinghouse to do this together with us.
Marie, would you like to add something?
Yeah, no, I think that is a very important interrelation to have, and have that dialogue early on. Because once we are progressing far enough, it might be difficult to go backwards. So have that on an iterative dialogue, I think it's super important.
Daniela, I saw you were writing down some notes. Is that something you want to add to this discussion?
Yes, because Mr. Barabaschi has just said it's not good to be listened, but what we should not do, it's important. It's the most important things, what we should not do. So capitalization of the lesson learned. This is the real essence of the lesson learned. And I think that this is the only way to ensure that all the ecosystem, industrial ecosystem, which is emerging from this fantastic experience at ITER is strong enough for the future, first of a kind. So again, capitalizing lesson learned, as just said, is a systematic approach. It requires a systematic approach on both sides. And I think that here, industry is demonstrated his willingness to follow this approach. I have to mention that this year, European Fusion Association has been founded. We are now more than 70 companies within this EFI, and this mission is precisely the one to bring the lesson learned and to spread. And we can, let's say, resume the mission of EFA in threefold. So gather, consolidate the lesson learned of all the fusion, let's say, of the members, and strengthen the supply chain by spreading the lesson learned, and then channel practical feedback to the stakeholders, to the public stakeholders, ITER, Fusion for Energy, and all the public stakeholders. So this is the only way, in our opinion, to move forward. And I think that EFA is delivering an important message. We are ready to contribute, but we want to deliver, but we want to be listened. So I come back to the topic of collaborating, so early collaboration. So it was just mentioned by Westinghouse at ITER, a practical example of how problems are tackled together and the solution is brought. And so there must be let's say, on both ways, the willingness. But this is the message also that has been conveyed recently in September, at the end of September, in the supply chain days by Fusion for Energy. So the approach which is maturing within this adventure is the same. So and I think that let's say, together, let's say, scientists, engineers, and industry will tackling through the errors and the mistakes that such a first of a kind has put on the table. Only through it can, let's say, deploy a strong and integrated fusion ecosystem.
Excellent points. And now I'm coming to you, Antoine. In fact, I think we're right on the topic, as this energy we're discussing might not be for today, but some of the technologies we're developing are for today. And Thales is an excellent example in this area. You're developing technologies like high-power electronic tubes, lasers, diagnostics, plasma heating, that are making, so they have applications in adjacent markets, and they're making revenues on their own. So please share with us some of this experience, and how can someone follow you in the steps?
I would say that the key word for Thales is key technologies, because as you mentioned, we are involved in fusion for decades. We were producing our first high-power microwave heating source for fusion in the 80s, and it is more or less the same story for lasers. It is a question of ecosystem, because we have a lot of cooperation with CA in France, with CNRS in France, but also in Europe with our partner KIT in Germany, with Max Planck Institute in Germany, and of course with ITER, with Fusion for Energy. And all this ecosystem is now moving fast. Fusion is moving fast. We see new kinds of actors like startups, but I have to say also that what we see at national programs level is impressive. China is impressive. So it's something really moving fast. As you mentioned, for us, this key technology are related also to other markets. Let's take just two examples, space and defense. In space, we are using high-power tubes in space for more than for 50 years, especially in the telecom sectors. We are putting lasers on Mars, which is quite something we are proud of. So we are moving from taking together all the things that we can manage in this crossover fertilization with other sectors, and in the same times leveraging all the potential of this ecosystem of fusion. And clearly, it means a lot of things for us to see how it's moving fast, because we will not do our products like we did before. We are clearly moving from a world of prototypes and laboratories to something where we have to deliver very well-designed products and solutions for our customer. And yes, it's an important topic for us.
So this is exactly what we were discussing earlier, as fusion is an opportunity, of course, in the future, but it's also an opportunity today for many of you in this room. I'll come back to you, Antoine, and I move quickly to Corn-Henri, because now we just heard from those who are developing the technology so far. I want to hear from you, who you will bring these technologies to people's home as an utility. There's a lot of, I think, excitement also in Germany. We heard the announcement of 2 billion over the next 3-4 years, I think, until 2029. And RWE had also a key role in all this engagement. I think you signed a partnership with a laser fusion company, and you intend to repurpose a fission site for a fusion pilot plant. So I think what can be also interesting to hear from you is about these partnerships. What kind of models do you see as an utility can work to accelerate fusion? So partnering up with governments, industry.
Yeah, thanks that you asked this, because we have heard now, especially from ITER towards the deployment of this technology, what Germany's ambition to fulfill this, to bring or to build really a nuclear fusion reactor in Germany, means that we have to solve a lot of issues, and everything what we have heard today, and being now 20 years in nuclear fission, I can say fusion is more complex in every single aspect of technology, of physics, and of building such machines. And to bring this together, we have to use all the foundation, everything what we have learned, we have to combine somewhere, or especially somewhere, to produce the next steps towards a power plant. And our partnership from RWE together with Focused Energy as a startup and the state of Hesse in the former nuclear power plant is in that way such a kind of a prototype how we can do this. Because it's not just about this one company, it's about exactly the learning which we have heard now. It's learning from ITER, it's learning from everything technology providers, and bringing everything together in one side to make fusion happen. And in our case, RWE is contributing decades of nuclear experience in operating facilities. The licensing of the site is, from our point of view, a cost-saving issue by itself, because there is a site which matches quite good to what will come in the future, probably, and safety and also our experience to operate plants and to execute projects are a plus of the site themselves. So we have more than one power plant in Germany, and the phase-out turns now into a chance that we probably can deploy fusion technology in Germany, but this will be a long time away. And as Pietro said, be realistic. Don't promise something which could not happen in the next 5 years. So we are clear, and we know this exactly, that this will take time, but we want to bring in our experience with the nuclear technology to do that step towards the power plant. And this could be a huge accelerator if you do it in sites or on sites where you already have the experience. So with the startups, by the way, we see that there is some new agile push forward. And we saw this in Germany exactly pouring towards the politics. They were moving the politics and pushing the politics to really get positions. And I think that this is a very good combination to have the agile pushing and the development of new technologies, but together with a realistic knowledge about a robust operating power plant. So we are talking about scientific machines, and there's a long way to a power plant where you can bring real electricity to the homes of the people. So this will not and never happen without having a government behind it. You need governmental political acceleration, you need aligning policy, and you also said that there is a regulation needed. Fortunately, in Germany, we have a very good radio protection law. Most of it can be done at even the next steps in the development to a power plant can be done under the current regulation. And there has to be more security for investments, more security for the suppliers, predictability how the projects will evolve. But this is a key lesson what we have taken out of our partnership. We have obviously the brownfield advantage of having sites which already provide a lot grid connection, for example, cooling possibilities. This is a power plant site, so we can have a big advantage there. And by the way, the local communities are knowing their power plants in their community. There is acceptance already there, and especially in Biblis, the people are identifying with the energy production, and that is also valuable. You can't not with something completely new on a site like that. What is very important, secondly, that we synchronize public and private roadmaps. So nothing works without a very good foundation in research. So we have to build on the research, and we have to have a combined roadmaps that we can build on the research, but heading up to the power plant, having this in mind, and we want to bundle everything on one side. So that is the fusion campus idea, which we have not born. By the way, for example, Culham has a very good fusion campus, but it's very research-oriented. But we can probably learn from that, put one step further, and make a decisive decision towards building or creating the basis for engineering, for component development, and really go to power plant design. And last but not least, as we all touched in a different way today, we have to build an industrial ecosystem. It does not help if somebody has the greatest fusion process itself, but you have to develop the ability to build it. You have to have the ability to engineer it, to research it, to understand it, to control and steer it, and finally to produce power out of it. And every single interface from step to step in this process is crucial to have the right partners in place. In our case, you have asked lessons learned, this three-party model from government with a very clear view that helps a lot for us, also the utilities, to arrange or to act into this surroundings. And on the other hand, to have a technology provider and a very strong supplier background, which makes it able to really build something, because that is what we have to do now. Engineer and build components for the future power plants based on whatever is learned on all the technologies which are already on the way. So we are building on a spirit of a campus, on building and concentrating knowledge and technology and people. That's mainly the point where I have my concerns. We need a lot of people which are able to do all this stuff. This is high-tech technology, but also robustness which you would need to really build a power plant, to operate a power plant. You need experience to really create the components which you need to make power out of fusion. And this should be concentrated on one side. So the site Biblis and the partnership is not just about this one pilot plant. It's just an ecosystem to bridge the gap between the science and technology and the industrial reality and the industrial application. And as I said, we are aware that this is a very, very long way still to go, and we need every single step to build on it to really come to a power plant. But from my point of view, the fusion energy to really bring this to grid is that deep tech challenge of today. And yeah, it's with a clearly disrupting promise, but also with the risk that this promise cannot be fulfilled. So it is very important that we make us on the way to check this out, and especially with the experience from the fission community, I think we can build on strong experience which is needed to really make this happen. And when utilities, governments, and the innovators and all the suppliers are acting in concert, the fusion can be energy production reality probably in, I would not say a number, 10 years, a decade, maybe. Let's see how we can develop. I think we will see facilities producing electricity from fusion energy. Whether this will be a power plant already, I think there is still a lot of improvement to do.
Excellent points, and yes, there's a lot of work ahead of us, but seeing the utilities engagement, it's a proof, it's a testament to the growing relevance of the field, and this kind of partnerships and broader engagement will be essential to accelerate. And Antoine, the same, I think it has happened in France, and Thales has been also part of that with this a new initiative, a new company being established, and together with CEA, the CNRS, and the École Polytechnique. So share also with us some of this experience.
Yes, new domain means also new way of working. And because Thales has all this enabling technology, because we have this know-how in lasers, because France has this fabulous legacy in lasers, and especially with the laser megajoule, which is let's say the French national ignition facility. We decided together with CA to create a startup, a spin-off of Thales. It will be independent of Thales, and GenF, and I take the occasion to say that GenF has a booth at WNE, and I invite all of you to visit my colleague of GenF on their booth, especially if you are investors or talented young people, because the purpose of GenF is really to go on what will be an inertial reactor. There is other startups in the world with the same purpose, but if in comparison to the magnetic fusion, there is very few, and we really see the opportunity to leverage all the French and Thales know on that to work on the feasibility of an inertial reactor in the terms of fusion, with a clear goal of producing energy.
Thank you, Antoine. Now, so I want to ask a question to all of you, and maybe if you can please give me a brief answer. I will start with Long from here. We touched briefly upon workforce development and how fusion will require a very skilled workforce. There will be requirement for expertise in superconductors, cryogenics, tritium handling, digital systems. So each of you, please tell me which should be the top priority in building a global workforce pipeline.
Yeah, I think in the following years, also ITER is still our top priority, and we will work for ITER some key components. Like first of all, we need to deliver on time, and we'll work our best for the assembly. So this kind of engineering workforce are also essential. And at the same time, when we are working for ITER, we'll think about the next generation experimental device in China, because this is also our purpose for joining ITER. We learn from the international community, and we do our own homework to develop. So, and based on this objective, we will analyze which kind of workforce we need. And as I said in the beginning, luckily we have a good experience in the fusion field, and a lot of expertise from the fusion field that can directly can work for the fusion development. So this is we will take advantage of this, and also international collaboration we think is very essential. Just 2 weeks ago in the IAEA FEC meeting in China, IAEA and CNC signed the agreement. A new collaboration center was established, and especially for the joint training for the new talents. So I think this is a very practical way to allow us to aiming for the future needs to improve our talents, because for the human resource, it's also one of the top problem for the fusion. Even for the country like China with such a huge population, but still this is, we admit is a problem. So we will continuously focus on this, how to improve our workforce about this. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, so there are certain skill sets that are foundational in the technobricks, such as material science, dynamic solutions, that really are relatively shared, whether you go for fission or fusion. There are, of course, special science areas for fusion, but several are, I would call them foundational for both. So I believe there will be a lot of needs to actually bring it together to real solutions. So moving from the only science part of one technical area to actually bridging it into solutions for both fusion in particular, but also then go back to fission. And I believe that is the skill set or labor force or engineering force, science force, that will need to be developed regardless.
I want to answer from a specifically Thales point of view. Our challenge is clearly to move to to components and to solutions for our customer, being able partners for both national programs, both for ITER and startups. And I would like to underline the leadership of Pietro on how we can make working together ITER, but all national programs together with startups, because we can see some opposition sometimes in the fusion domain between these two types of actors. And clearly, in our view, and especially if I'm looking at the technology we manage in Thales, clearly the purpose will be the same, and it is totally complementary. So we want to move to a solution provider for all this sector. And let me add one point. Daniela mentioned the European Fusion Association, and it's important to know for all of you that we are structuring our effort as an industry. And I heard that 18 companies around WNE are part of European Fusion Association. I think it's quite significant for the fusion world. Maybe in comparison to the fission world, it's quite different, but it's very significant. And in the same time, I have also to say that we see the European Commission moving from fusion, which will stay focused a lot on ITER, but in the same time to move from, let's say, plasma physics and research to something much more focused on PPP and fusion for the purpose of producing energy. And things are moving, and I think it's really important. As Thales, we really want to be part of that. As we see how other country or other regions of the world are structuring their effort, and I will take, for example, the example of Japan, which is very well structured in terms of supply chain and in terms of industry. So in Europe, things are moving the right way, and we have to go faster.
Yeah, from our point of view, fusion is quite far away from an operating point of view of a nuclear or of a power plant. But what we consider is the exchange of knowledge and experience. So from the fission community, knowledge of how to operate a power plant means bringing into the design the maintainability of a plant. To think about availability of components, to bring that operational thinking into the design work, which is now necessary to create a new plant design for a fusion power plant. You can think it probably like having a fusion island and the rest is the more balance of plant and the powertrain, and that would be not so difficult. We know how to operate that, but I think the devil is in the detail. And since we currently discuss a lot with scientists, I think it's quite important to create a new part of a workforce which understands both sides. And I think that is what we like to contribute, and what we, in our case at RWE, want to understand a little bit more. How could this look like if you have a future power plant and not only a scientific machine doing some plasma physics? What for us is, by the way, very interesting is that we currently see that future power plants will probably, in operation, look completely different. Control systems would rely much more on probably AI-based steering algorithms or something like that. This is not what fusion or what fission can provide. Fission is totally, I would say, old school, but it has a reason. It's a safety reason. But I think a combination of doing something more digitally in design and in operation, this is something from my point of view, which is the main task when we think about new talents, when we build up new workforce. It's how to improve or incorporate the digitalization into the new power plant process of the future.
Okay, as a final statement, I have to say that Ansaldo Nucleare is within the Ansaldo, the world of Ansaldo is with fusion since the very beginning. So we have seen this system evolve and up to the big experiment within ITER. Now, as I said, I think that really we need to create a kind of systematic channel to exchange the lesson learned with the stakeholders. This, I think, is one of the most important points to highlight in order to be concrete and step and accelerate the way forward. I re-underline the role that industry can have here and the availability of industry to support this, this lesson learned. And again, I follow what you have just said about what's beyond the tokamak or the fusion itself. So we need to accelerate also all the rest in order to come from an experimental to a power plant. So the power conversion, everything which is related to the energy storage. So this is something that we should, as an ecosystem, we should, let's say, all together tackle within European, let's say, within European project.
Difficult to add. What I can say is that I can add to this discussion and to close is that fusion technology is a technology which merges electrotechnic and nuclear. It is something which is quite unique. Experience has been that people that join, for example, the ITER project tend to be very experienced, tend to come from either the nuclear field or, say, superconductivity or high flux components from many fields. And what I have in mind and what we try to do now in ITER, now that we have high pace and high execution rate, is to breed, let me use this word, breed, a generation of talented electronuclear engineers that can gather the experience, the unique experience of assembling and commissioning a fusion device like ITER. There is no other place in the planet that I know where this can happen. And so we are working now with the academia and, of course, with industry. Industry, you want to retain, of course, but we also have to provide the opportunity to young and talented engineers and scientists to come to ITER, contribute to this very fast-paced, now it's fast-paced, and also agile. Okay, I really like to think as ITER as a startup. So agile environment, and get a lot of experience during this unique experience of the ITER assembly and commissioning, so that then they can go back, say, to and find a job in industry, but with the view of the architect. With a view of the architect, which for the time being, we have not yet been able to consolidate in the supply chain, I think, to the level that will have to be there if we want to deploy this technology on larger scale. Thank you.
So thank you all for sharing all these insights. That was quite a very interesting round. Thank you for also being brief. We have one last challenge because we have 5 minutes left. I have one last question to all of you. And this is, what is your message to WNE? So please, Long.
Yes, I think we already mentioned now it's the turning point for the fusion development where we are now have set our objectives for the near term, and now we are open for the collaboration, and we hope through our deep collaboration, the dream of the humankind for the fusion energy, for this ultimate energy will be achieved in our generation. Thank you very much.
From my side, I hope that we can be able to continue to push technology forward that benefits both fusion and fission through the application of this ITER project.
I would say I don't know who will win the fusion race, but I'm sure that one will win it. And clearly, once again, things are going very, very fast in the last year, and I do not see reasons for things not continuing in that perspective.
Now we talked about building blocks and foundation, and when I see this very impressive exhibition here, it convinced me that we have a foundation to really build on that, also for the next generation of fusion power.
The nuclear journey is a complex journey that requires always collaboration, but I would say that fusion even more. So what we have learned is that only through a collaboration of industry, scientists, organization like ITER, we can succeed and face the next phase of deployment of this real a magnificent, let's say, experiment into the power generation sector.
Well, I want to thank the WNE and the management and Sylvie and Berman and of course you, Matteo, and the IEA for making this session possible, to giving us the opportunity. That's the first message. And the second message I say to the WNE at large is that we try to be grounded. It requires courage, but to be grounded. I think grounded in developing a new technology is essential. Otherwise, we move in the public relation domain, and this is not conclusive to the solution of the problems that are ahead of us. Thank you.
So we heard how fusion might not be for today, but the technologies, the supply chain, the know-how, the skills that are being developed are for today. Fusion is an opportunity for all of you. I hope this was interesting. So thank you for staying with us, and thank you to this wonderful panelists.
Thank you for this amazing session with all the insight. Thank you once again to a great panel in Fusion. Fusion is coming, apparently. Well, actually soon, we're going to have a lunch break, I think the most of you, but at 2 o'clock, I would love you to be back here, because we're going to talk about first of a kind without failure, and that means how nuclear players can deliver with confidence. So please be back here at 14:15 and join us for that session, and enjoy your lunch. See you later.